Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we unravel the mysteries lurking in the shadows and explore the stories that send shivers down your spine. From unsolved crimes to paranormal encounters, from eerie legends to the unknown, we're here to take you on a journey into the unexplained. Every story has layers, and every layer brings us closer to the truth or deeper into the mystery. So grab a seat, turn down the lights, and get ready to dive into the unknown. This is the Deep Dive.
All right, ready for a deep dive? Today we're diving into the mystery that still has everyone talking, the disappearance of MH370.
All right, so picture this. You're all set for a regular international flight, one of hundreds taking off that day, right?
Right.
But then this plane, it just vanishes. Gone. Poof, that's MH370 in a nutshell. And today we're not just skimming the surface, we're going deep with expert help to guide us, trying to put those puzzle pieces together.
Absolutely.
We all know the basics. March 8th, 2014, Flight 370 takes off from Kuala Lumpur, headed for Beijing. Routine stuff, or so it seemed. Then, silence.
Yeah.
But here's the thing that gets me. It's been over a decade. We've got incredible tech now. So, how does a Boeing 777 just drop off the radar?
It really is incredible, isn't it? The how is what makes this whole thing so fascinating, so perplexing. I think it's easy to assume constant, air traffic control like in the movies, but radar, our main way of seeing what's up there, well, it has limitations, big ones.
Okay, so it's not like those movies where they're watching every inch of the flight path. There are gaps in what we can see.
Gaps are a good way to put it. Imagine a flashlight beam, right?
Okay, I'm with you.
That's kind of like radar. And MH370, it's like it flew right into the darkness between those beams.
We rely on the plane itself to help us out too. The transponder signal, it's basically MH370 saying, hey, I'm here. But that signal, it can be switched off on purpose or by malfunction.
Uh-oh.
And in MH370's case, things went silent just as it was leaving Malaysian airspace, entering Vietnamese airspace.
Making that handover crucial.
Exactly.
So we've already got two possibilities, and neither one sounds great. But on top of all that, we've got those two passengers traveling on stolen passports. I mean, back then, that had to have set off alarm bells, right? Oh, absolutely, especially with the timing just months after the Boston Marathon bombing. Talk about a tense moment. But investigations later on, they found out those individuals were probably looking for asylum, not tied to terrorism at all.
So it was a bizarre coincidence on top of an already bizarre situation.
Exactly. And those stolen passports, well, they weren't the only early lead that sent investigators down a rabbit hole.
So we've got a plane, a 777 no less, that's gone dark, on purpose or not. And investigators are left with more questions than answers at this point.
Yeah.
But just because we don't have a crash site doesn't mean there are no clues, right?
Right.
This is where things get really interesting, at least for me. We're not just talking wreckage. We're talking digital breadcrumbs. Like data points scattered across radar systems, satellites, the works.
You've got it. It really does become this puzzle of piecing together these tiny clues. And the first real breadcrumb, it came from an unlikely source, Malaysian military radar. So civilian radar, it loses contact as MH370 is heading towards Vietnamese airspace. But the military radar, they kept tracking the plane.
Right?
But, and this is the real kicker, it showed MH370 making a U-turn. And I don't mean a slight course correction. This was a complete 180, turning back towards the Malaysian peninsula.
Hold on. Backtracking. That's not your average navigational error.
Yeah.
Someone or something deliberately steered MH370 off course. The question is why? And where were they even going?
The million-dollar question, right? And that question, it leads us to another breadcrumb. Those faint signals, more like whispers really, that were picked up by Inmarsat satellites. Now, we're not talking about communications signals here. Nothing like the kind you use for a phone call. These were automated handshakes. Think of it like this. Every hour, the Inmarsat satellite, it pings like a roll call. And if MH370 is in range and functioning, it pings back automatically.
So even though the transponder wasn't saying, hey, I'm here, MH370 was still quietly responding to these hourly check-ins from the satellite.
Exactly. And get this, by analyzing the timing of these handshakes, the Doppler shift investigators, they managed to create a partial flight path for MH370. This is how we know it didn't just disappear. It kept flying for hours over the Indian Ocean.
It's like a ghost plane. Communication systems are off, but it's still moving with purpose across this vast ocean. What gets me is how each piece of information seems to bring up more questions than answers. Like we keep saying deliberate about that course change.
Right.
So let's say it was deliberate, meaning someone was in control.
Right.
What are the chances of it being mechanical failure then? Not likely, right?
Not really, no. While a major mechanical failure is always possible, the fact that MH370 stayed in the air seemingly under control for hours makes it less likely. Plus, those usually leave a trace, right? Debris, smoke, distress calls. We have none of that with MH370.
Which leaves us with, what? Pilot suicide. A hijacking with some secret objective. Did something, or someone, force MH370 off course? And even then, why go to all that trouble just to vanish over the Indian Ocean?
Theories abound, each with their supporters and detractors. And trust me, getting into those theories, well, that's where it gets even more interesting.
So we've got what seems like a ghost plane, a trail of digital breadcrumbs leading out over the Indian Ocean, and a whole lot of what-ifs.
Yeah.
Time to dive into those theories then, because without the plane itself, that why of MH370, it's still a huge question mark.
It's a choose-your-own-adventure, isn't it? Except this is real life. And each theory, it's got to line up with the evidence, or lack of it, that we've talked about.
Right, so let's start with what I think is the most unsettling possibility in these kinds of situations. Pilot suicide. What makes investigators even go there with MH370?
Well, it's not taken lightly, that's for sure. But when you look at that deliberate course change, the communication systems being shut off, it does point to someone knowledgeable at the controls. And then there's the whole thing with Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah's flight simulator data. Reports say it had a route on there, and it was eerily similar to MH370's final path.
Chilling stuff. But if this was a planned disappearance, wouldn't there have been other signs? I don't know, like personal problems, financial worries, something to suggest that level of planning beforehand.
You'd think so, right? Investigators went over the captain's life with a fine-tooth comb. What they found was colleagues speaking highly of him, a stable family life, no red flags that really stood out. Some people even argue that the simulator data is being misinterpreted, that it's just a big coincidence. But without more concrete proof, pilot suicide, it's still just a theory.
Which brings us to another theory, hijacking. Now, we know those stolen passports initially pointed in that direction, but if it wasn't terrorism, what else could it have been?
This is where those Freescale semiconductor employees on board come in. Their work, it was high-tech, some say even had military applications, which has fueled speculation that MH370 might have been a target for corporate espionage, maybe even a state-sponsored operation. Think about it. Force the plane off course, land somewhere remote, vanish with valuable tech. I know it sounds like a movie plot, but in the world of high-stakes tech, stranger things have happened.
Okay, that's straight out of a spy thriller, I gotta say. But wouldn't a hijacking, especially one this complex, leave some kind of trace? Someone would have to talk, right?
You'd think so, yeah. The more people involved, the harder it is to keep quiet. But on the flip side, if a government was behind it, well, they might have the resources and the motive to keep it all under wraps. It's a question of weighing the what-ifs against the lack of hard proof, really.
It's a lot to process. So we've got theories, everything from tragic to straight-up sinister, but what about a good old-fashioned mechanical failure?
Huh?
Could something have happened that just looked like deliberate action?
It's possible, but not super likely. Planes today, they're amazing pieces of engineering with backups upon backups built in, but there's always room for the unexpected. Some experts have suggested a sudden decompression, disabling the crew, with autopilot keeping the plane in the air until it ran out of fuel. Others say maybe it was an electrical fire that knocked out communications and messed with the autopilot. But no distress call, the very specific way the course changed, those details argue against it. Still, can't completely rule out a perfect storm of unlikely failures, right?
It feels like every answer just leads to another question. There's one more thing we haven't talked about, though, and it involves tech that almost sounds made up. Richard Godfrey and his work with something called the WSPR network. This is where things take a turn, wouldn't you say?
This is where MH370 gets really weird. Picture this. A global web of radio signals, always there, bouncing around us, but most people have no idea. That's the Weak Signal Propagation Reporting Network, or WSPR. Amateur radio operators use it. What Godfrey suggests is that MH370, as it was flying over the Indian Ocean, might have actually left traces in this WSPR network, like a ship leaving a wake.
Wait, so you're saying we could track a plane's path based on how it might mess with these radio signals? How is that even possible?
The idea is that anything moving through the air, it disrupts radio waves just a tiny bit. Super faint signal, easy to miss. But Godfrey and his team, they've come up with algorithms that sift through all that data, looking for those little anomalies that might line up with where MH370 flew. What they found, well, it's fascinating, but also really confusing.
That's where that figure-8 pattern comes in.
Right.
What could that mean? Was the pilot searching for something? Trying to land?
$1 million question, isn't it? Godfrey's work, it's groundbreaking, but some people are skeptical. They say the WSPR data, it's just not precise enough, too much interference to say for sure. But if Godfrey is right, it throws a whole new wrench in things. It would mean a level of control, of intention that no one was really talking about before.
It's a mystery inside an enigma, that's for sure. The thing that really hits me is that even after all this time, MH370, it makes us rethink what we know, about technology, about why people do the things they do, about the nature of truth itself. And a wild ride.
And maybe that's what MH370 leaves us with, a reminder that in a world where we're always connected, with more information than we know what to do with, some secrets, they stay hidden. But that doesn't mean we stop looking, stop questioning, stop trying to put those pieces together, even if the story seems determined to stay untold. If we ever find those black boxes, would we get definitive answers or just more questions? It's something that still fascinates me, and I know it haunts anyone who's ever really dug into the mystery of MH370.
It's a question that's captivated us here, and you, our listeners, no doubt. If you're as hooked on this as we are, we've got links to articles, maps, even Richard Godfrey's own research in the show notes. Go check it out, explore the possibilities, and who knows, maybe you'll be the one to uncover the next clue in this whole mystery. Thanks for being here.
And that's a wrap for this episode of The Deep Dive. I hope you enjoyed today's exploration into today's mystery, and that it gave you some valuable insights to think about. If you found this episode helpful, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to stay updated on all our future deep dives. As always, thanks for diving deep with us today. Stay curious, stay informed, and we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.